Are you ready to stop shrinking to fit into someone else's version of success? Welcome to Illuminate Your Worth, the podcast that helps you remember who you are and reclaim your life. Hosted by transformation facilitator Heather Stewart, this is your space for soulful conversations, coaching insights, and reminders that you're not here to settle. You're here to shine. Now let's dive in.
It's summertime, so I feel like diving in would be fabulous right now. I am Heather. I am the host of Welcome to Illuminate Your Worth. And yes, no matter who you are, if you are listening, I think you're worth it. And we are on the Inspired Choices Network. And I have a sign in my office behind me, not this office, my other office, that says, "Don't dim your light to fit in." And this is the mantra I want you to carry through the rest of your hour, month, day, year, lifetime, right? We don't suffer from tall poppy syndrome here. We stand up and we say, I am here. I am ready to be celebrated. And today we are talking about what I learned by getting up. So those of you who have been listening for a little while know that my previous podcast was called Back to Me. And it had almost 4 full seasons. I almost got 4 full seasons of that one in before I stopped dimming my light to fit in, and I went and up-leveled and came to the Inspired Choices Network. But there's an episode on there called What I Learned from Falling Down. And I kept meaning to do this follow-up episode, What I Learned by Getting Up. And a little bit of history. So I have talked about it somewhere along the road about December 2023. I was on vacation. Everybody thought I was crazy just to go on vacation. I was in Egypt and Jordan in December 2023. And there was a bit of unrest and uncertainty and concern about the conflicts going on in that part of the world. So a lot of people were not going there. And I decided just to trust my intuition. I decided to trust the travel company that they would know what was going on over there. And I went. And I will tell you, it was amazing. Egypt is on my list to go back to because it was just so fascinating. You need to really slow down and take your time there. And because of the things that were going on, this is only part of the story, but because of the things that were going on there were actually very few tourists. So the tour that I was on had half of the number of people that it usually would. So when I did go to all of these sites to partake in seeing what was going on, there was no crowds. I'll tell you, the best time to travel is when nobody else is, no crowds. You could get in, you could see things. When I turned 50, my husband bought me a trip to Paris to celebrate my 50th. Let's celebrate that right there. And we went in the off season because that's when he could surprise me. And I was looking at the Monet's water lilies. I was in the museum. If you don't know, it's in this oval-shaped room, and the water lilies are there all the way around the walls, and there was nobody else in there but me. How often, like you can see that on TV when people are touring them, but that's because they've kicked everybody else out. I was there by myself looking at the water lilies. It was so good. But going back to Egypt, so you know that I digress. It's part of my charm. So I went from Egypt to Jordan, and we had even fewer people on our trip to Jordan. There was only 5 of us in our trip to Jordan, and it's a fascinating place. Oh my goodness, so many very cool things that I had no idea about. If you're a Star Wars fan, you know the Star Wars with Rey, the latest Jedi. I kind of stopped watching them when they went a bit off the rails of the storyline. But there's a scene where Rey is standing in the desert and there's these epic rocks behind her. I was there. where they filmed that installment of Star Wars. So everybody is standing and taking picture, getting their picture taken, trying to pretend they're a Jedi, in front of this rock. And I went wandering off. And there was this really huge, it wasn't a rock. It was like this giant formation that I went over to look at. So I'm in the desert. I'm in Jordan. It's probably, a good 45-minute drive into the desert. And that night we were going to be staying in the Bedouin camp. Yeah, Egypt is amazing. Um, talking to the chat room. Hey, if you ever want to chat with me, come over to the chat room because I can see it and I'll talk to you while you're here. So I'm looking at this giant rock formation and I was stepping back to get a better look at it. And the only rock in the desert I tripped over. Don't walk backwards and look up. That's my lesson. And I fell backwards and I broke my wrist. And at the time, the thing that went through my head was, oh, that hurt. So I went over to the guide, and because I was 14 years as a therapist, a massage therapist, I know a lot of anatomy. Where I live, to become a massage therapist is a regulated health profession by the government. So I had pre-med anatomy. So I knew what was going on. So I'm tractioning my wrist and I'm holding on to it so that it doesn't hurt. And I went over to my guide and I could see the swelling starting. And I said, yeah, I fell down. And I showed him, and he had that oh crap look on his face. And he said, maybe it's just sprained. And I was shaking my head going, yeah, maybe it is. No, it's not sprained, my friend. So we had pretty much ended our trip in the desert at that point. Luckily, that was our last stop. Took everybody else back to the Bedouin camp. And they drove me to the village hospital where the doctor looked at it. He said, wow, you need an x-ray. We don't do that here. So he splinted me up and he put a little brace on so that I could not constantly be trying to traction my hand. And then we got into another car and we drove to a military hospital 20 minutes down the road. And it's so interesting to go into these different places. I had another x-ray, or I had an x-ray there. And they said, yes, it's broken. We don't do that here. So, and, if I think about the people who I know, some people that I know who, if this was happening to them, I think they would go crazy and, start yelling and screaming. So I'm now in my second hospital. And yeah, we don't do that here. But it was so fascinating to watch, because there's no waiting rooms where I was. There's people standing around, there's people sitting on the floor, there's people coming and going. I can't tell who's who, but there's lots of interaction going on. And luckily, my guide knows what's going on. And the son of the Bedouin tribal chieftain was the one who was driving us around. And they have a very strong ethic on treatment of guests. So I could tell that he was trying to advocate for me very strongly. So we drove another 20 minutes to the hospital in the city. And more things happening, more people, more sitting around, more standing around. And all this time, my guide I can see money changing hands and things being stamped. So you have to pay for services there. And if I was alone, that would have been a huge challenge for me. But they drove me so I'm in the third hospital now, to take an x-ray. And went into the doctor's office and sitting on this old couch. I'm like, where did you get this couch? It's like from the 60s or something. It needs refinishing. But he spoke very good English and he said, oh, come and look. And he showed me on his screen. He's like, I'm like, yeah, it's broken. Holy moly. He goes, yeah, it's broken. We're going to have to set it for you. He said, and then he said to me, I've done lots of these. I'm very, very good. I said, okay, great. That sounds fabulous. So they take me into a treatment room, and there's people sitting on the floor in this treatment room. One lady came over. I didn't know what she was saying, and she was like blessing me and tapping me, and I was just saying thank you. I didn't know what she was saying. But she was very sweet. And they they put a needle into the bone to freeze it. That was probably the worst part. Falling down and breaking something, yeah, it's not great. But for me, that was the worst part of it, because I don't know if you know what a vasovagal response is, but when your body goes into that shock mode, and you can see it in people when they go to faint and their blood all rushes out of their face, or they throw up. That's what was happening to me. So he said, maybe you should lie down. I said, maybe I will. And I was trying to reach into my pocket to find my phone. This is how comical this is, because there was my guide and the doctor and another fellow pulling on my arm while I'm lying down. And I wanted to get a picture of these three big men pulling on my arm, trying to set my wrist, because I thought it was nobody's going to believe this, that this is randomly happening. My poor guide, he's trying to pull on my arm. And so they set my wrist, they put a cast on. And if you know about the swelling of broken wrists, it's like half plaster and half just gauze, because there's so much swelling. If they put a full plaster on, you would strangle your fingers. And then they said, okay, thanks, see you later. I was like, okay. He said, well, when you go home, go to the doctor. I said, okay. So my guide was very sweet. He got me a hotel room. He went and bought me painkillers. He went and bought me food. And I'm sitting in the hotel room messaging my husband, who's still at the Bedouin camp, because I didn't want him to be hovering and worrying. And I said, I'm great. And he said to me, do you want me to book flights home? And I said, no, why would I do that? Why would I want to book a flight home? Well, he said, well, you broke your wrist. I said, so? So think about the people you know in your life. I mean, if something like this happened, everyone who I tell, oh, I broke my wrist, they just assume my vacation was ruined, right? And it was actually part of the adventure. It was such a great part of the adventure. I got to see things that your average person touring, visiting is not going to see. Now, yeah, I mean, I don't recommend you go and break something just to go visit the hospitals in another country, because you don't know what you're getting into. But I did not see it as something negative. And this is a way to look at the world. So I've talked before about the human brain is wired for the negative, right? The human brain is wired for the worst outcome, because that's preserved us as a species. But I trusted that I was in good hands, kind of like I was in the hospital with my stroke. I got to the point when I talked myself down, you're in good hands. These people know what they're doing. Let them do their job. So I knew I was in good hands. I knew my guide was taking care of me. I knew the son of the Bedouin chieftain was there for my best. So I'm just going to enjoy the ride and pay attention and see what's going on. And at one point, I'm standing in a hallway, and a very official looking man comes up and talks to my guide. And what I asked them afterwards, he said, what was that? He said, oh, he's a policeman. He's an undercover policeman. He wants to know why you're here. Because if you looked around, I was the only Caucasian person in this hospital. And they want to know why you're here and what happened. So their concern is, of course, what happened to this poor woman? Is there something that we need to do to help her or make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else? And my guide said, it's just, she fell down. She just fell down. She was having a clumsy moment, and that's okay. So the part of my trip, which made it so fabulous, was the fact that I fell down. Think about that one for a minute. Think about, would you consider something off plan? I didn't see it on my agenda. I didn't see falling down and going to the hospital on my trip agenda that I got from the tour company. But do you consider things that throw off your perfectly honed plans and concept of what's going to happen for you during anything that you schedule or plan? Do you consider that as a positive or a negative? And I'm not going to say either is right or wrong, but it will color and impact your life, your enjoyment, your ability to adjust to what's happening. So we're going to go to our first break. And after that, we're going to talk, now that you know how I fell down, I'll give you a little, we'll start to get into what I learned, not only how to be super happy and excited and have a good time when stuff goes off the rails, but also what you learned in the aftermath of stuff going off the rails. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What if your too much was actually your superpower? On Illuminate Your Worth, Heather Stewart guides you back to your truth with coaching, mindset shifts, and powerful conversations designed to light up every corner of your life, from career and creativity to wellness and worth. Tune in weekly and discover how to stop surviving and start thriving on your own terms. Listen to Illuminate Your Worth with Heather Stewart on the Inspired Choices Network and wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
You're listening to Illuminate Your Worth with Heather Stewart. Want to connect live during the show? Join the studio audience in the chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send questions or coaching requests to info@heatherstewart.coach. Let's get back to today's episode and your path to a thriving life.
Dun, dun, dun. Yes, let's go back. So I am Heather. This is, welcome back, Illuminate Your Worth, and on the Inspired Choices Network. So we are talking about falling down. You know, when we're little kids, we fall down. I feel like little kids fall down all the time. But, you scrape knees, you get a boo-boo, and your mom kisses it better, and then off you go, and you have more fun. And when we're grown-ups, falling down literally and figuratively seems to be more traumatic to us sometimes. Like we just, this isn't what I planned, darn it. But can you really plan your life to the letter? I have a friend who, when she plans her vacations, she sent us an agenda at one point for a trip we were going on. She had been to, it was when we went to Paris. She had been to Paris, and she said, oh, here's what we did in case, because we were going free flow, and we were like thinking, we were thinking about what we wanted to do. She said, I'll send you my agenda. Hers was in 15-minute blocks. Now, whether she really tries to stick to those 15-minute blocks or whether she can go with the flow, I can't say. But I saw it, I said, I'm not doing that. I personally love flexibility and to have one or two things planned and then just see what happens. So maybe that mindset automatically helps me adjust to when things go a bit sideways. So here I am in Jordan. Now I have a cast on my hand, a sling, which if you try to tough it out, by the way, and not have a sling, I'm just going to tell you because I tried to do that. Don't do it. If the doctor says, hey, wear a sling, wear a sling. And yes, and I had these lovely painkillers. And you can get so much stuff over the counter there that you can't get here. It's not like I'm going to just take them for the fun of it. I was taking them for a broken bone. But when you fall down or when things go off the rails in your life, the way, I mean, I this thing keeps popping into my head about how you deal with lost luggage is how you deal with most things in your life. And I don't know if that's totally true because I can remember having lost luggage and being really annoyed because I wanted my, toothbrush. Now, yes, you can go out and get a new toothbrush, but right now, and that was probably 20 years ago, so maybe now I would be more relaxed about lost luggage. But thinking about when things are different than how you want them really is what this conversation is about. When things are different than you had planned. So when I fell, some things that I learned from falling is just letting people help you. We have this interesting lone wolf, I'm so strong, I can do it all, I can do it myself kind of ethic that we glorify. And that kind of permeates everything. Even like when you get sick, like when I was sick a couple of weeks ago, um, would you have just toughed it out and powered through instead of taking time off to let yourself recover? I recovered in 2 days, where if I had powered through and tried to keep working like I used to when I was a corporate executive, I would have just like wouldn't have even masked up because COVID wasn't a thing there. I would just gone in, oh, suffer, 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 so that I could get some sympathy. How does that help me or anyone else? I'm not being effective. Just stay home. Um, and what are you trying to prove? You know, I'm proving that I'm strong by saying the world's not going to end if I stay home for 2 days, I think, in my mind. So take some time. And when you're only one-handed, and it was my dominant hand, yes, it was my dominant hand, you learn to accept help. You learn to, and I am someone who is very independent and very, consider myself very self-sufficient. And I do take some pride in that, you know? And at the same time, I have come to learn over the years that I can be that, and this isn't an either or, and I can also accept help. And it's not going to diminish my ability to be self-sufficient. And it's not going to diminish my ability to do the things that I do. So you can imagine my dominant hand is broken. I have long hair. I had to have my husband wash my hair and brush my hair for me. I was I stopped at a UPS courier place to pick up a box. And I said, can you put this in this bag for me? Because I couldn't even put the box into the bag to carry the thing. It was winter time. It was January. I was downtown and I had been inside somewhere. And I had to stop a stranger and ask him to zip my coat up for me. I mean, this is the extreme of asking. This was very intense for me to ask for this kind of help because I'm a grown up, but I had this thing and I will admit I was kind of, resisting a little bit at first. And then when I realized what I was supposed to be, besides the fun that I had, the adventure that I had, the aftermath of it is now you've got an injury and it's also still part of your lesson and part of your adventure. So when I realized, oh, that adventure was just the beginning of the adventure, the touring around the hospitals in Jordan was just the beginning of the adventure. What's the next step of this adventure? So you get up and then something is different. Something has changed. How can I make this an adventure? Who will I ask to zip up my coat today? Who can I ask to help me, when I'm on the bus. So I take the bus sometimes in Toronto, and they're quite crowded. And because I couldn't get my cast out the sleeve of my jacket, people couldn't see that I was wearing a cast. I had to actually go up and ask, "Can I sit down, please? My hand is broken," for people because I couldn't hold on to everything and not fall over with the bus moving. So finding new ways to navigate changes in life is what you're going to learn by getting up. I remember this old saying, if you fall down, if you fall off the horse, you get back on. Is that what it is? Something like that. And it's a good philosophy, right? Don't if something happens, if you fall down, if something changes, if something doesn't work out, you take the lesson from it rather than look at the failure in quotation marks, right? So if you think of failing, we have these school systems set up to did you pass or did you fail? Like fail. It's like this big booming word that sticks a dagger in your heart and twists it. It's like, really? That's not what failing is. In fact, you cannot learn if you don't fail. The way that our brains work is through making mistakes. And we've created this idea that anything that is different than what we envisioned, different than we planned, or less than we thought it should be, is a failure, and we are less than we should be. But you can't be less because you're shiny and bright, and you are worth everything that you want and think about. It just might not come the way you think it should. The universe is going to have bigger plans for you than you could even dream up. Your imagination isn't big enough. So for me, when I broke my wrist, it was oh my goodness, that was interesting, and I got to go on that beginning adventure, and then I was on the second half of the adventure when I got up, because things had changed. Even now, things have changed. So when I came home, I immediately, the day that I landed, went down to the hospital and had an x-ray and got referred into an orthopedic surgeon. And I will say, the doctor in Jordan did an excellent job of setting my wrist. Excellent. The ER doctor thought it looked fine. The orthopedic surgeon said he would have actually left it the way it was because the doctor did such a good job if it wasn't my dominant hand. So I did end up getting surgery. On Christmas Eve, I had surgery. Another part of my adventure was getting surgery on Christmas Eve. The adventures just continue, my friend. Like, come on, this life that you came down to this world to have an adventure. You didn't get to define every parameter of how it was going to unroll for you. You didn't get to say, I only want the good parts. Yeah, leave the bad parts out. Because when you came down for the adventure, the bad parts are part of the fun at the end of the day. And there's really no bad parts. It's lessons. Like I said, mistakes are lessons. Things that are different than what you wanted are lessons. Things that turn out not quite the way you wanted are lessons. I mean, I've been running my own businesses now for 20 odd years, 20 something years. And do you think that every time I tried to put a product out or put a service out or run a webinar or run a program that hundreds of people showed up? I mean, I run programs where 0 people showed up, and it was me talking to myself. Did I suddenly say, oh, nobody loves me, I'm just going to go crawl under this rock? No. I said, oh, that was interesting. That didn't really work. I wonder what I could do differently to change this to make it better. Think about all of the things we have in the world. Light bulbs. There's light bulbs on right now around me. Light bulbs, cars. Do you think that the first time they said, I'm going to make a light bulb, poof, it worked perfectly? No, nothing works perfectly the first time. When you first learn to walk, do you think you just went, yeah, I'm just going to get up and walk. Here I go. No, you had to learn by trying and trying and trying and trying. So when you get up from whatever's knocked you sideways, maybe it's not a physical injury, it could be emotional, it could be your job, it could be, anything in your life that throws you off of the track that you were on. What was I talking about? Oh my God, did you see that? That thought just shot right out the side of my head. So, what can you learn from this? And what 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 is the shift that is happening? What can you do to just adjust a little bit and make it better? I actually started writing with my right hand. Let me tell you, that's an interesting thing when you're left-handed. Um, and it's an interesting thing for your brain too. Maybe my brain's just becoming even more powerful because now I'm ambidextrous. Ambidextrous. So we're going to talk about this some more because the lessons that come from falling down are many. When you get up again, there's many more to learn. So we're going to go on to a quick break. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a moment. This is Heather on Illuminate Your Worth.
What if your too much was actually your superpower? On Illuminate Your Worth, Heather Stewart guides you back to your truth with coaching, mindset shifts, and powerful conversations designed to light up every corner of your life, from career and creativity to wellness and worth. Tune in weekly and discover how to stop surviving and start thriving on your own terms. Listen to Illuminate Your Worth with Heather Stewart on the Inspired Choices Network and wherever you get your podcasts.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
You're listening to Illuminate Your Worth with Heather Stewart. Want to connect live during the show? Join the studio audience in the chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send questions or coaching requests to info@heatherstewart.coach. Let's get back to today's episode and your path to a thriving life.
Hello, friend. Welcome back. This is Heather. This is Illuminate Your Worth. We are chatting on the Inspired Choices Network. And if you come over to the chat room, you can really chat with me, IRL, in real life. And we are talking about falling down and getting up, falling down and getting up, falling down and getting up. And I feel like that's just kind of like life. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And I don't know if you have heard of the poet Rumi, but he has a great, great view of life. And I will get it totally wrong, but he makes the comment of, it's something like, if happiness is at your table, sadness is, sleeping in the bedroom, kind of saying you need both. You need the contrast. You need to be able to have sadness and things not work so that you can fully embrace and understand and see happiness. Everything in life how we navigate life is through comparison. And I know we're always talking about don't compare yourselves to one another. And I don't mean comparison in that way. I mean, when I'm trying to describe someone, I'm like, that person is tall. Tall relative to what? So it's like tall relative to me, tall relative to a building, tall relative to a tree, tall relative to a bush. So everything that we discuss and try to describe is always in relation to something else because we don't really have any other way of understanding things. So for me to describe how much fun I had traveling through these hospitals in Jordan and how interesting it was to learn different ways of navigating with a broken wrist, I had to have the comparison of what it was like not to have a broken wrist, how to have a fully functional body. And then it's like, something's not working right. So this used to be like this, now it's like this. How will I adjust to take me to maybe not where I was, but to an ideal place? Take me back to a place where I can achieve the things that I want to achieve. Even my stroke, because I still instruct kayaking. And this actually happened just this past weekend. I was instructing kayaking with someone that I hadn't instructed with before. And he's a high school teacher, which is, whoa, big respect for my friend Jeff, who's a high school teacher, because you got to be patient to be a high school teacher. And I had to let him know one of the after effects from my stroke, which I still find lingering. We are almost 4 years later. Sometimes I can't find words. I should tell you that too, shouldn't I? Every now and then when I'm talking and you see me go, look off into space, it's because I've lost the file. It's still there. My files are still there. But what sometimes, someone's gone in there and messed up my office and I have to go looking for it. So the ways that I've learned to navigate getting up from a stroke, I made some adjustments. I learned many lessons, which will continue to inform me as I travel on through my life. Falling down and breaking a bone, because I'd never broken a bone before, that was super interesting. And I've learned to navigate that. Having my first ever surgery, that was super interesting, learning to navigate that. And that also helps me understand in a more not authentic, but a more visceral kind of way, what other people are going through, when I can see, oh, I see that. I get that. I've had that. And I don't advocate running out and getting every injury or problem that you can get so you can relate to other people, but it does assist you in relating to what's going on with other people. And the more we can understand that everyone in the world, no matter who you are, even me, has stuff going on. That doesn't diminish your stuff, but it does allow you to understand that whatever their stuff is really impacting their behavior. And your stuff, you can choose how much it impacts your behavior. So if you're having a bad day, take yourself off and let yourself have your bad day. You don't have to have your bad day with other people. You don't have to be crabby with other people because you're having a bad day and give them, here, you can have some of my bad day, and here, you can have some of my bad day, and here, you too. No. When I'm having a bad day, I'll just isolate myself. It's like my version of COVID. I'm having a bad day. I'm just going to be isolated for today because no one else needs to catch this. I think it's not fair to spread it around, but that's my personal opinion. So when you can find a way to accept anything that's happened to you that was different than you planned, or different than you hoped, or different than you intended, or different than you dreamed, accept what is. Accept what is. And I came up with something when I was in the hospital, when after about an hour, when I stopped fighting with the doctors about whether I'd had a stroke or not, I surrendered to what was going on. And some people don't like the word surrender because it's like you're giving up. So I put a little tagline on there. I was surrendering to what was happening, but I was not giving up. I was allowing what was happening to unfold with the intention of how I wanted it to, the final outcome, perhaps. And that didn't mean immediately. So it took me about a year before I was fully back to where I felt like my strength, my physical strength was back, my physical coordination was back. Many people wouldn't have known that I'd had a stroke. I could still, when you live inside your own body, you live inside your own body, you get to know it pretty well if you pay attention. And little tweaks along the way. I had a bit of vertigo for a little while, so I found ways to kind of retrain my vision and retrain my brain so that I could avoid vertigo. But I had surrendered to the fact that I'd had a stroke. Okay, check. That wasn't what I'd planned. I've had a stroke. Now, not giving up, recognizing something has happened. What is my next step? And then what is my next step? And if my first step that I take, oh, that didn't work, that's okay. That's a lesson. Maybe I'll step this way. When I broke my wrist, I went in Christmas Eve, yes. Well, actually, I went in December 23rd for surgery because it was like I was on standby, surgery standby. You know, when you go to the airport and you're on standby, you don't know when you're going to get in and you don't know if you're going to get on the plane. I was on surgery standby. And I went in on the 23rd thinking I was going to get surgery on the 23rd. But because I'd been traveling, they suddenly went, oh my God, you've been traveling. So they had to test everything to see if I'd been in a hospital in another country. So they had to, you name it, they were testing it to make sure I didn't pick something up on my way home. So I didn't have my surgery till the 24th. And this is another way, like, we're funny about bodies, aren't we? We're funny about bodies. We don't like to see the insides of them. We don't like to know anything that's going on inside of them. We just want it to work right. It's like, I'm not going to lift the lid on my car because it's too confusing. I'll just take this to the mechanic and let him look after it. But I had a nerve block in my arm so that I could stay awake for my surgery because I wanted to go home on Christmas Eve. And I was joking with the surgeon, and I was in a teaching hospital, so it was actually one of this fellows who did the surgery. So my arm is stuck way out to the side, and I'm like, "Can I watch?" "No, you can't watch." They gave me some big long excuse of why I couldn't watch, but I was listening to them and the power tools. I have a plate in my arm with like 12 screws or something, and I'm listening to them. I'm like, I'm talking to them. And I don't know if that happens to them very often. They seem to find it quite comical. But I wanted to be I wouldn't say I was in control, but I wanted to be a participant in the outcome of what this experience was going to have for me. So I was taking ownership of my health and well-being. I said, yes, we're going to do surgery. I want to stay awake and I want to listen. I mean, they give you a little bit of thing that makes you a little bit drowsy, but you don't really fall asleep. And I was very interested in what was going on. This might not be for you. I understand. But I've always found the bodies super interesting. Even the insides of them are interesting. So when you surrender to the current circumstance and you say, okay, this isn't something that I can change, but I can pause. I can press pause on my fighting. I can press pause on my resisting. I can press pause on my complaining and wanting something different. And that allows me the space to think about, with these current circumstances, what is my best step? What do I want to move towards? What is the outcome that I want from this? So I had a broken wrist. They said surgery. They said, we're going to put a plate in. I said, okay. Then my next step is I'm going to stay awake and listen and joke with the surgeon so that he's in a good mood because he's working on Christmas Eve. And I'm going to go home for Christmas Eve and I'm going to allow my husband to wash my hair for me. And I'm going to find the best way for me to have the speediest recovery, the healthiest recovery, obtain full range of motion of my hand again. I know people who have broken wrists who still can't. I mean, I'm a yoga teacher. They still can't do downward dog. I can do downward dog. And I'm a year and a half out of my break. So there's steps that you can do for yourself to take ownership of what is instead of denying it, right? So we're going to go for our very last break, and then we'll come in with some final fabulous thoughts for you. And This is Illuminate Your Worth. I am Heather. We're on the Inspired Choices Network. We'll be right back.
What if your too much was actually your superpower? On Illuminate Your Worth, Heather Stewart guides you back to your truth with coaching, mindset shifts, and powerful conversations designed to light up every corner of your life, from career and creativity to wellness and worth. Tune in weekly and discover how to stop surviving and start thriving on your own terms. Listen to Illuminate Your Worth with Heather Stewart on the Inspired Choices Network and wherever you get your podcasts. You're listening to Illuminate Your Worth with Heather Stewart. Want to connect live during the show? Join the studio audience in the chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send questions or coaching requests to info@heatherstewart.coach. Let's get back to today's episode and your path to a thriving life.
That's me, Heather Stewart, .coach. You know, when I found out that .coach was a new extension, I was on that because my name is so common that I knew that it would be snapped up right away. Heather Stewart, .coach. This is Illuminate Your Worth. We are on the Inspired Choices Network, and I forgot to tell you at the beginning of the show, today is the new moon in Cancer. And it's interesting, that alignment, because what I'm asking you to do today when something goes sideways is to pause before you react, to reflect, and to choose. And the new moon is all about pausing and reflecting, like pausing. So it's, when there's no light. So this is like your time to sit and think. This isn't a time for action. Action is the full moon. This is the time for planning. So how fabulous is that? We're in the new moon. Yeehaw. So also a great time of the year, or time of the month, to go and look at the stars. Get out of the city, because I don't know about you, but there's a lot of light pollution in the world. I have an Apple TV, and it shows you the view of the world from like satellites or something. I guess they're from satellites. And Earth, there's such bright zones. You can see the outlines of continents because it's so bright. And then you can see areas where it's black. It's like, whoa, I'd like to go there and see darkness. When I was in Africa, dark. In the middle of the outback, oh my God, so dark. Anyway, I digress. We are back. We are Illuminate Your Worth. And we're talking about getting up. And nobody likes to fall down. I get it. Nobody likes things to be different than what they'd hoped. But it's funny that we don't want that, because it's just such a normal part of life. I can't think of very many things that ever went in my life exactly as I had planned or intended them to go. And the more you fight against the things that are happening, the more you're just causing yourself strain. The more you fight against things, the more difficult you're making your life. It's like, it's like you keep banging into the same wall when there's a door you could walk through. It's like, I'm going to keep banging against this wall instead of just walking around it, or picking a different direction, picking a different space. And often I get it. Sometimes I can't see when I'm doing it. And my coach will say to me, why are you doing that? And I'll suddenly go, oh, you're right. Why am I doing that? Why am I fighting against something that's just a waste of my energy, right? It's just a waste of my energy to fight against what is. And when you want something different than what is, that's a good thing, because that's how we make change in the world, change for the better. But doing it in a way where, so what just popped into my head was, when I was in swimming instructions, they're like, if you're caught in a current, don't fight against the current, go with the current, but just kind of veer off to the side a little bit. So it's like you're going with it, but slightly different direction, slightly on an angle, so that you can get out of what's happening. So if you're being carried along in the what is and you're like, actually, I want to go over there, you don't try to turn around and fight against it. You just kind of pull yourself over to the side. You get a slightly different trajectory, and that can take you somewhere new. When I'm navigating in a kayak, if you've never had to navigate in a boat, even a degree off of where you're aiming, if you can't see where you're going, can send you, kilometers off of where you're headed, which is why it's important to have really good navigation skills. So a degree off, if my life has had this going on and I'm going in one direction and suddenly I get knocked to the side and I'm now going on a left turn and I didn't want to go on the left turn, I'm just going to slightly start to redirect and be patient. Our best things that we can do for ourselves when things aren't the way we want them to be. 1, recognize that something's not the way that you want it to be, and you might already know that. 2, reflect on what is happening now. So it might not be everything that's happening that's not the way you want it to be. There might be parts of it that are actually pretty cool and pretty good. So reflect on what it is. What is the part of that that's not the way that you would like it to be right now? 3, while you're doing that reflection, get an image of what you would like. How would you like your life to be? How would you like this situation to be? And then decide what your first step is. Sometimes it's a hard conversation that you need to have. If something has gone off, I'm just thinking of work situations where something is not. I have a client who her work situation needs some improvement, and what had to happen was difficult conversation with the person who is causing some of the problems. So once you decide, the final step that sometimes people don't forget is to actually do the thing. And I've said this in multiple ways, multiple times. You have to, when you make a decision to do something, you actually have to then go do it. It's like me saying, well, I've decided to go to the gym and then not going. Right? It's like, how's that going to help you? Sure, you decided to go to the gym, but without action, nothing changes. So that doesn't mean I want you to put the action ahead of the planning. Which is the other things that sometimes we do. We become impulsive and we just start throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Instead, take today, whatever day you're listening to this, take an hour to think about something that's different than how you want it, or that has gone off the rails, or that is not the way you intended. Think about it. Think about how you want it to be. Decide what your first step is, then take the action to take that step. And I always say to people, my clients a lot, I said, if you're working on something, because they'll have projects they're working on and they'll get stuck. And I'll say, well, that's why I'm here. I am a reflector for you. I am someone to talk through ideas with. I am someone to say, Heather, I see this. What do you see? And I never tell people what to do, because that's not my role. My role is to hold big flashlights, spotlights, so that you can see, so you can get your clarity, so you can see what it is that maybe it's just even seeing options, right? Discussing what options are, discussing which one you think would work best. And when it's not working your best, helping you recalibrate. So that's what I am here for. Keep listening to the podcast, of course, because I will have endless ideas for you. But if you ever need help, just reach out and let's have a chat conversation. I am Heather. This is Illuminate Your Worth. We are on the Inspired Choices Network. You are all the best. And I will see you again next week. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into Illuminate Your Worth. Heather Stewart will be back next week to help you shift your mindset, reclaim your joy, and build a life that fits you. Catch the next episode on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific. Until then, take one inspired step today and keep shining.